Okay, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had a few sort of questions I've been thinking about asking you.
No, I'm curious.
Um, yeah, basically about questions about how how some of the other things you've studied, like heart math and breath work, and chiropractic. I mean, we've talked. I've heard your story about kind of with chiropractic and network
Mm.
chiropractic, and we could revisit that, of course. But I think maybe a good place to start is you're doing a lot of breath work facilitation these days through Soma Breath, which is one of your newer things that you really have studied extensively. And you've been bringing some of that into our neurogenic integration classes, and we're going to be doing more with that and partnering with the Soma Breath organization. So it's super exciting. But so I thought maybe it would be good to hear, yeah, what has been really powerful for you about breath work?
Well, it's all actually coming out of neurogenic tremoring. Um, I would use tremoring for, I mean, as a chiropractor, most of my patients naturally come in with pain. I mean, that's why they contact me. And seeing a couple of things there. Um, for example, how much stress, tension, and trauma is actually the reason behind a lot of the pain that people are experiencing, especially the chronic pain. That was one aspect of me looking for other modalities and to figure out how to help in a deeper way.
Hmm.
And then also, just one thing, because people are coming in with a very pain oriented mind frame. It's sometimes difficult to move them over to thinking in new ways that this might be something completely different that is causing it. So the psoas was like my entry point for many of these people. Because there is so much psoas tension, and people can really understand it because they can really feel it. They understand the connection. It's easy to explain. And then I could use that as an entrance into neurogenic tremoring because we access the psoas.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of how I would, and still do today, help patients understand how to use tremoring. And then that opens a gateway of understanding in a deeper way. So a lot of the work that I do is mostly in groups, actually. And watching groups, seeing what happens to a whole group of people after tremoring, the silence that they experience inside themselves. I remember as one, it was a young woman. She was she was like, we were talking about it after it was her introductory course, and she was like, I've never experienced a quiet mind like this. How long does it last? And it was just like, oh my God. It was like the longing on her voice for that inner silence was just touching very deeply. So I started getting very curious about this, and I got curious about exploring guided meditation post tremoring. And as I was doing that, watching people's tremors, watching the breath, I realized that, oh, the breath is really, I mean, I knew that from chiropractic work, but seeing it more, how it developed in people when we were doing groups and group sessions, and I could follow people over time, I need to learn more. So that kind of got me into heart math.
Hmm.
And then, of course, also you start working with the emotional component and how to how entrained we are to constantly repeating the negative stuff. The whole society is trained towards that, and it constantly brings us in that direction with all the stimuli around us. So working with heart math and how you can actually how you actually have a choice in the matter, and you can practice these emotions that empower you rather than continuously automatically practicing the ones that pulls you down, was amazing to me. So then working with the breath and that mindset got really interesting, and then I realized, oh, I need to learn more about how the subconscious mind works. So then I got into hypnosis, and I realized I needed to know way more about the breath. And then I came across Soma breath, or Soma breath came across me. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but it was an interesting set of coincidences or synchronicities, depending on how you look at it. So that's kind of the train of development, how I got into breath work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how? So I've got a few questions. So going back to the tremoring days, sort of and leading tremoring groups, and then oftentimes the SOAS was kind of an entry point for explanation. Tell us, give me a version. Like, how do you explain that? Like, so how do you talk about the role of the SOAS, and how is that a good starting point for somebody to understand tremoring?
Well, it's mostly biomechanical explanation, because people really understand that. So I would just show the psoas, how it attaches, and you can easily understand how this would affect your low back, which a chiropractor treats a lot of, how it would affect your pelvis, which we treat a lot of, how it would affect sciatica and prolapses that we treat a lot of, and hips that we treat a lot of, and then knees and attaching, and the diaphragm and tension in the chest. And, the psoas connects to pretty much everything.
Sure.
So, showing them this would go, a lot of people will go, oh yeah, because they could actually also feel. I started discovering, just like I can palpate the lumbar spine, and I can instantly tell just from palpating that they probably have pain in the groin. It's it's just the way things are connected. So so that's an easy access, and people get all like, oh my God, how did you know that? Well, it's the way the body
The
is connected.
biomechanics work.
Yes.
Right, right.
So, and then I would often treat around it. Sometimes the psoas will just release because you get the pelvis moving, you get the lumbars moving. Sometimes it wouldn't. And then we would start treating the psoas directly, and that's not necessarily the most pleasant thing in the world, digging in there. So then I would explain to people, of course, how to stretch it, because people want to know how, but stretching sometimes is counterproductive. It's already
Overstretched,
yes,
lengthened. Yeah,
overstimulated.
yeah.
So why would you start really cranking on it again? So that's where I would bring in tremoring and explain it as a way for your nervous system to access that muscle, and try to release it from the inside rather than from the outside by me pushing or them stretching or trying strengthening or whatever it was, because those are the concepts they were working with. And that was quite easy for most people to understand.
Okay, yeah, very
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah. In terms of that second phase with heart math, how would you describe the principles of heart math to somebody who is just new? You were going to teach them coherent breathing or something. How do you explain the purpose of it, a little bit of the science and the methods?
To a patient, depending, of course, what they're coming in with, but it would be how can I say it, a process, usually over several treatments, where I would understand that the patient understands something about the connection between how they're feeling and what's happening in their lives, and how continuously being stuck in a negative emotional self-talk would cause them to stay in the present situation, and causing them to continuously having to come back to get treated. And I would explain to them that, I can treat this, of course, but if you don't solve the issue that is causing this to happen, then, you'll keep coming. So that's usually the entrance point that I would use there.
But what about but what about more like so that that helps me understand the goal, but not really like the method or what what is heart math like
Heart math is basically a way to create what we call physiological coherence by using the breath. As you know, the breath breathing in is a sympathetic stimulation, breathing out is a parasympathetic stimulation. And breathing at a certain rhythm with an equal amount of time breathing in and breathing out, you balance sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. And you can do this with your breath at a rate of about 5.6 breaths per minute is like the average that hits most nervous systems. Most of us breathe at least 10 breaths or more per minute normally.
Right.
So it's a way slower breath. Generally, you breathe about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, and that will keep you to around 6 breaths per minute.
Yeah.
And that will get you there. So that's like the basic starting point of heart math, is balancing your autonomic nervous system, creating heart coherence or physiological coherence just by using your breath.
Right.
And I would often find that people who were really sympathetically activated, they couldn't even do that. They would get dizzy just sitting in the chair, breathing slowly. They would get nauseous. They would get anxious. There was so much stuff coming up just from slowing down the breath. So it's kind of amazing, actually. So for some of those people, that's where also Soma breath comes in. You can shift to a slower exhalation and stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system a little more, and that will help them.
Yeah, well, so that's where I wanted to head next, into Soma breath. So it sounds like you got your kind of a big entrance into breath, helping people through breath work through heart math, and then you evidently got, then you came across Soma breath or vice versa, and then and dove in there. And my understanding of Soma breath is that there's more variety of breath practices. There's more
Enormous.
Yeah, so
It's huge.
tell us a little bit about the Soma breath system as a whole.
Well, I just want to hold one finger on heart math for a moment first, because heart math, since it's based on rhythmical breathing, they have done a lot of research on that over the last 30 years. It's kind of amazing. And then what they also saw was that if you added a empowering emotion and start to practice those empowering emotions, it was much easier to keep your coherence up. And this is measured. You sit with a little sensor on your finger, and you can actually see on the screen in live, real time, that your coherence is either going up or down. And what's very interesting is that even keeping your breath rate totally steady, and your coherence is going up and up and up to a certain level, but if you want it higher, you need to add that emotional component. And you can see when people are actually feeling the emotion and when they start thinking the emotion. Because the moment they start thinking the emotion, they don't always notice themselves, because it's very subtle, that shift. You can see their coherence just go poof, down. It's fascinating. It is really interesting. So, It's I just needed to learn more. It's just so empowering to see literally on the screen what your breath can do. Just your breath. So Soma breath has it's based on pranayama. So there is lots of different breathing techniques. There are breathing techniques to calm you down, to balance you, to stimulate you. There are breathing techniques to cool you down, to help you sleep, to help your digestion, there's a lot of different things to bring you into higher states of consciousness or different states of consciousness. So there are very many different techniques. Yeah, it's I like their basic. How can you call it? The basic Soma breath daily dose, they call it, which includes a series, or a time of rhythmical breathing, a time for breath hold on the exhalation, a time for breath hold on the inhalation, back to normal breathing, and then repeat that cycle. And you can vary the rhythmical breathing in terms of different rhythms, depending on where you want to bring people. So generally, we bring people down into a parasympathetic relaxed mode during the first, maybe second round. Then in the middle somewhere, you shift to a balanced state. Then you start bringing up a lot of good emotions and help people practice that. I bring in heart mass, of course, opening the heart, practicing empowering emotions. And then if you really want to get that going, you pick up the speed on the breathing, and it's extremely expansive. And then at the end, you just go into a state of Kevala, we call it. It's like a state of no breath, total silence, deep meditation. So a lot of people who's never either had the patience or feel like they cannot meditate because they're thinking all the time, experience this state of silence with Soma breath as well, just like with neurogenic tremoring. So both of those are entrances into the same, or at least a similar state of consciousness. And this is where I love to work, doing the guided meditations and help people transform their lives through understanding how powerful they are by teaching them tools like neurogenic tremoring and breathing, if it's heart math or Soma breath or both. That they have a variety of things that they can access on their own whenever they need it. With Soma breath, you kind of, or with tremoring, you have to kind of put aside some time. What I really like with heart math is you can do it as long as you're not speaking. You can do it. It doesn't matter. It's not like you don't have to close your eyes and meditate. You can just do it. So I use it all the time when I'm as a chiropractor with my patients, because it creates a good field around me just to I don't like the word protect, because that kind of sets up a barrier. It's not a barrier. It's just like I don't get overrun by other people's suffering, pain, and stress.
Right.
But I'm totally present with them. I don't protect myself with closing anything off. It's just like a soft enveloping buffer. I don't know how else to call it. And it's wonderful. And it's very interesting, because I often see that when people are really needing to tell their story of pain and how hard life is, they generally go into this auto play, and they tell the story maybe 2, 3, 4 times, including what the weather was like and what the mother-in-law said on the phone that day. Maybe what they had for dinner when it happened. It's like all these non-related factoids come into this because the nervous systems are so stressed. But if I notice that's happening, and I just start my heart mass breathing and connecting to my own heart, so many times people just, it's co-regulation. It works awesome. So it's just a wonderful tool where you don't have to kind of stop people. You just help them land in themselves and they realize, okay, I have explained what happened.
Right.
You know, I don't need to do it one more time because I'm heard, I'm seen,
Right.
you know. So it's a way of receiving a person. It's not a way to protect yourself. Yes, I really like that about heart math a lot.
That's a lovely explanation.
Mm.
With Soma breath, I know that they're doing they I don't know if if I don't know if it's ongoing or it's been complete, but they're doing a research project.
Cambridge.
Cambridge, right?
Mm.
Do you know which of the Soma breath protocols are being studied? Do you know?
Yeah, it's they may have done some pre to this, but as far as I know, it's the 21-day breath protocol that they are studying for PTSD in particular.
I see. And do you know
Yeah.
so is it 21 days of like you described earlier with rhythmical breathing and
It's a specific protocol set up. The 21-day protocol is it's quite extensive. You learn about your subconscious mind, how powerful it is. You learn about, you get some light instruction on general health, like eat, exercise, stuff like that, from an Ayurveda point of view. You learn a little bit about the power of sound, music, not so much, but you get an introduction. Then you get a meditation you can practice, a breathing meditation you can practice, and this is ahead of time before the course actually starts. And then you go through basically 3 weeks of, you start off learning how to breathe. That is how you breathe properly, to and why that is a good idea. How it affects your health, how it affects your mind. Then you learn to create what they call a perfect average day. That is creating the day that you could live, not the day you win the lottery or jump out of an airplane, because that's not sustainable. It has to be a perfect average day that is sustainable in your life that you would like to live. What is that? It's basically your dream. And then how to create that very specifically, because that's what the subconscious mind responds to better. So you go through a process of arriving to what is your perfect average day. Then you have a whole week of meditation on that. Then the next week is creating your inner council using avatars because in order to arrive at your perfect average day, you have to become the person who can have that. You know, if you talk about subconscious programming and social hypnosis, stuff like that, in terms of, like, an easy example would be, I want to be financially free. But
Right.
in your subconscious, you have a program that says that rich people are bad.
Yeah.
You're not going to get there because you're going to sabotage yourself the whole way, right? So then you have to become the person who understands that rich people are nice. If you want to change it to that, to make it really kind of silly simple.
Sure.
So then you use avatars that give you the qualities that you need in order to accomplish your perfect average day. A classic example could be, if you want to be a public speaker, use Tony Robbins as your avatar. You know, if you want to be a great skier, then use a great famous skier as your avatar. So what is it that you want to accomplish in your perfect average day? Find the people. It could be real people, it could be fantasy people, it could be animals, it could be whatever
Yeah.
works for you.
Yeah.
And you embody their qualities. You breathe them in, basically, in your next week. So then you're starting to develop the qualities you need in order to accomplish your perfect average day. And of course, they call it, I love this, LOVE, level of vibrational energy. So you add a heightened emotion, a empowering emotion, or whatever. And usually you get that just by staying in your perfect average day, because of course it would inspire you.
Sure.
And then the last week, it's a really intense breathwork week, where the breathwork actually is an hour every day, where you go through this transformative, moving through all of these things that you have now, using your avatars and your perfect average day and the breathing technique itself to really get you going. And then we use techniques that are, this is partially where the name of Soma breath comes from. Soma, as you know, means body in Latin, but in Sanskrit, it is the name of this substance that the ancients used in order to access higher levels of consciousness, to get in wisdom, to get advice, to just access different states. And there has been great interest in trying to figure out what this substance is. Nobody knows. There is a theory now that this is DMT produced by your pineal gland. So the breathing techniques used are a way to increase the chance of a DMT dump into your brain. So then what happens, they call it the journey into the white light, because a lot of people will see colors or lights when this substance is released. Other people will have like very deep inner experiences. But that mystical experience, if you want to call it that, is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is your personal change towards whatever it is that you're moving towards. So, of course, creating a better life for yourself, creating a new future for yourself by making these shifts will naturally have an effect on PTSD, where you're really, really enslaved to your autonomic nervous system based on past experiences. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the results.
Yeah, great. Oh, good. I'm so glad I asked. That was cool to hear. In Soma breath, can you talk a little bit about like in that daily dose that you mentioned, where there's rhythmical breathing, breath holds on the inhalation, breath holds on the exhalation, and then neutral breathing, and then repeating that. Can you talk a little bit about what's the goal of what's happening? What's the purpose of the breath holds on the inhalation and exhalation?
Well, let's start from the beginning. The reason why it's called the daily dose has to do with the fact that you go into what's called intermittent hypoxia. That happens on your breath hold on the exhalation.
Can you define that?
Intermittent hypoxia, it's basically where your CO2 levels in your blood rise and your O2 levels goes down. Pretty simple. And people are so used to thinking that CO2 is the bad stuff that we need to breathe out, and oxygen is the good stuff that we need to breathe in. Well, as everything in life, it's not that simple. That is actually false information. CO2 is a very, very interesting component. It is not just a waste product, as we are led to believe. But anyway, the daily dose is based on, I don't know if you're familiar with these machines. You put on a mask, they will feed you, they will basically increase and decrease the levels of oxygen that you're breathing. You have a sensor on your finger, and you go through this cycle of breathing. That the goal there is to basically increase the amount of healthy mitochondria that you have in every cell. A mitochondria is basically the little machine in your cell that produces ATP, which is your energy packets. It's what runs your body.
Yeah.
These have a tendency to break down. They reproduce on their own, and when they are not doing too well, they decide to die.
Yeah.
But what happens when you increase the CO2 levels in your body? The ones that are not so well functioning die off, and the ones that are well functioning multiply.
I see.
So you get more mitochondria of a healthy quality.
I see.
So you increase your cell's capability of producing energy. That's
I
one
see.
thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's like just that in itself. This is the effect of
Significant.
CO2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
CO2 in a higher level of CO2 in your bloodstream will also help release stem cells from your bone marrow. Stem cells are non-differentiated cells that go to places of injury and help repair.
Yeah.
So that's something that is you can do naturally just with your breath.
Hmm.
CO2 is also a vasodilator. So it expands your blood vessels. So if you have too little CO2, your oxygen is actually a vasoconstrictor. So having lower levels of CO2 and higher levels of oxygen that we're all led to believe is like the key to
Right.
good thinking, it will actually increase your blood pressure and decrease your oxygen delivery to your body because you're decreasing the amount of blood flowing through. Plus that you have the Bohr effect, which causes the release of oxygen into the cells by the exchange of oxygen and CO2, basically. And if you're packed with oxygen everywhere, there is no exchange. So you basically most people overbreathe. It's very interesting. So
So like,
but it's a matter of dose. This is why he calls it a daily dose, because if you go into hypoxia too much, if you keep holding your breath, if you do soma breath with 5 rounds every day, you overdo it, and then it's not good for you. You know, if
right.
you have too many breath holds on the exhale. So you have the daily doses are within a good safety margin, so they are usually 2 to 3 breath holds. And you could do that every day, and it
Yeah.
will increase your health.
And I've heard the term that that one of the goals of breath work, I think this is what you're talking about, but I've heard the phrase, and some athletes talk about this too, this idea of increasing your CO2 tolerance.
Yes.
And it sounds like doing the breath holds increase because during a breath hold, I assume there's a buildup of CO2, and then you're then physiologically adapting to
Yes.
sort of to be able to be basically to normalize that or to be okay with higher
Yes.
levels of CO2.
Exactly, which
Okay.
will relax you
Yep.
and cause all of these things to
Other
happen.
processes to happen.
Yeah,
Okay, super cool.
it's very cool.
Nice.
CO2 also have another interesting um, quality. I don't know if you know about this, but it can also increase anxiety. Or actually, I shouldn't say can, it will, depending on your tolerance. They've done studies where you inhale pure CO2. And they've done studies with people, I can't remember the name of this syndrome. It's people who do not experience fear. I don't know if you know about this.
Yeah, I've heard of
It's like
that. I can't remember the
they
term for that.
cannot,
Yeah.
yeah, and
I've heard of that. Yeah.
it's a serious issue because they
Right.
cannot judge situations and they get into trouble. But anyway, CO2, however, will trigger fear even in them. So if you breathe pure CO2, 2 inhales of pure CO2 or 3 at the most will put you in a complete state of panic.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's kind of natural to think so because you need oxygen to live. It's hard to live with oxygen, but you can't live without it either, right? Because of oxidative stress. Now that's a whole different, that's another other thing we could talk about, but we don't have to go into that. But so there was, I think in the 30s, they did research on treating anxiety with giving small doses of CO2. Because then you could increase the fear response in the body controlled, and the person could work with it knowing that this is a gas, it is nothing real around you There's
Right.
nothing that actually is just the gas, but the emotion comes up clearly. But then you can actually work with it. And as you increase your tolerance to CO2, anxiety actually goes down.
Reduces.
Yes,
Interesting.
it's very interesting. So there are many good reasons for increasing your CO2 tolerance.
Wow. Super
Yeah.
cool. All right. So talk a little bit about what do you think are the possibilities of, like, why would you be interested in exploring both Soma breath with a group and tremoring, either in the same literal session, or just as like, say, for example, in a workshop environment or a retreat or immersive environment? How would you, what do you consider, what possibilities have you seen or do you believe might be possible
Mm.
with exploring the what can tremoring, how can that benefit from breath work and vice versa?
It's two different ways of accessing the nervous system. And it's there are so many possibilities here. I've used it very like practically. I remember we had what do you call it? A kindergarten locally that had really high sick leaves. So they contacted us and wanted to have a TRE course for all their employees.
Yeah.
And so we arrive and I have my lecture and I explain what's going on. And I could already see in the audience a couple of people who were starting to become fearful of the prospect of tremoring. It was very interesting. You watch people's breathing, you see what's going on. And so before we were going to start the exercises to initiate the tremors, I had a word with those two people because I didn't want them to be fearful going into this. And with both of them, one of them was going into a straight up panic attack. We had just been talking about the autonomic nervous system and how it works and how tension and trauma expresses itself in the nervous system. And she said, I'm so afraid to meet something, that something is going to come up that I cannot control. And I had to take her into a different room and she was losing it. And I just sat her down and started breathing with her in where the exhalation is twice as long as the inhalation. And I think it took like 30, 40 seconds before she started calming down. It was amazing to watch how fast it worked.
Yeah.
The other one there was, she was not quite as fear-ridden, so I just told her about this breathing technique, and I kept an eye on her, of course, during the tremor session, but very efficient. So I've seen that several times. I've used for people going into panic in different modes. I've used it, and it's super effective. I've used it in my clinic. I've used it in before TRE, and once also someone who was touching on it in a TRE or a tremoring session. Very effective. So that's a very practical way to use it. Combining a full daily dose with all the cycles of breathing and stuff. I like to do it after a tremor session because then you're already deep. You're already quiet in your mind. It's very easy to slip into the tremoring, and into the breathing, and you can go even deeper. I like to use it as an entry into the tremoring instead of kind of like you are using Feldenkrais. So it's a nice way to start the tremors in a very gentle, soft way. And I also use a lot of heart math in relationship to tremoring.
Great. Very cool.
I think I use more heart math than soma breath, actually.
Got it. Got it.
It's like tremoring plus soma breath together in one session is I like to have a lot of time. It's deep work. It's can be somewhat demanding. So it's more of a workshop that goes over several hours or a retreat kind of thing that you do. I have done it in very large groups this summer in Ängsbacka, but that was in a retreat situation that was going over a whole week. So people were very prepped for the experience. But that it's important to work with resilience during the session, in my opinion. So, but heart math and tremoring is a beautiful. I always combine it. Always. It's a beautiful way to practice titration, for example. It's a beautiful way to keep people within the window of tolerance. It's a beautiful way to help them release with safety and understanding and compassion for themselves. It's yeah. So
Well, that's great.
that combination I really love because it's so gentle and caring and understanding and non-judgmental, accepting, all of those feelings that you really need to heal and to find the courage to go somewhere new. Soma breath together with neurogenic tremoring is a little more, yeah, it's definitely more workshop oriented, no
Yeah,
doubt.
cool. Well, what if we pause here for a minute? Well, is there
Yeah.
anything more you want? Anything to tie things together, or
No, not
okay?
really.
Let's take a little pause.